Welcome to TalentWise, a podcast dedicated to identifying and unpacking challenges and solutions related to the workforce. In each episode, we hear from experts in their fields or industries who are fighting to better understand and adapt to shifting workforce dynamics. What are those dynamics, you might ask? Put most simply, the workforce crisis we've seen coming for decades is upon us, and most of us are not nearly as prepared as we should be. Today, we are very fortunate to welcome our friend, confidant, and partner, Rashida Reese, President and CEO of Rebirth Marketing and Consulting, and her colleague, Jillian Darling, Rebirth Social Media Manager. Rebirth simplifies the marketing process by leaning in to fundamentally understand its clients' needs and to support them by telling their stories and producing results to help them achieve their goals. Our team has worked alongside Rebirth to support a number of clients, including the Birmingham Police Department, the Birmingham Jefferson County Port Authority, and the subject of today's conversation, good jobs. A timely conversation given our last episode, which featured Dr. Olivia Howell and Sarah Wilson. Rashida, Jillian, we are thrilled to have you guys with us today. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you, Danny.
Well, Rashida, you founded Rebirth back in 2018 with a goal to offer businesses a full-service marketing partner. Can you kind of share with our listeners your why? Like, what motivated you to start the firm, and how does that purpose continue to shape the agency's identity today?
Yeah. So 2018 was a crazy year, if you guys remember like what was happening in terms of economy-wise. But I'll push back to 2005. So 2005, I started my career at ABC 3340 in sales. And from there, I just continued to love working in a media marketing space and worked for several television stations as well as AL.com. And what I recognized was that I had a serious passion for working with businesses. Loved the idea of working with small businesses initially because I recognized they understood that they needed marketing, but did not know what marketing really was. And so when I was transitioning my career in 2018, and it was really 2017, I was working for a company and it was acquired. And I felt this is the last time I'm going to do this with a media company. I did not want to continue to work for a company. And every time I look up in the next 2 years, we were being transitioned or acquisitioned. And so I decided that I was going to start a company. Had no clue what that meant. But what I will say is I knew I wanted to work with businesses. I knew that I had a need. There was a need for it because in my career working with businesses, no one knew what they wanted to do. They were like, oh, I just need marketing. And so nobody understood what marketing really was. And so my why really was to help small businesses when we first started, really simplify the marketing process, really make sure that small businesses understood a few things, that marketing can mean a lot of different things. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to simplify that process. We wanted to make sure we connected businesses with their audience and opportunities and really help organizations deliver real outcomes that can translate back to their original goals. And so my why was rooted in helping businesses the entire time.
Well, that background's really helpful. You know, your website says, just to quote some of the content on your website, we are storytellers. Our job is to ensure our clients' stories are heard because we are their voice. How does that philosophy play out when you're working with a public sector or community impact campaign versus a commercial client?
Well, I think for the most part, I think both of them are similar because no matter if you are a community or a public sector client versus a commercial client, your ultimate goal is to reach an audience. And so we definitely knew when we're looking at both brands, you know that these people want to connect with an audience. And so I think the difference is public sector, you have to be accessible. You have to have your messaging right. You want to be relevant to the audience, and your audience may be vast. You know, A public sector campaign, as you know, we're talking a little bit about good jobs. That could vary from not only geography, but then also demographics. So many different things go into a campaign from a public sector perspective. I think for commercial clients, it's important to be authentic, and it's important for brands to recognize who their clients are, and that client could have a very specific audience. So I think for both of them, we ask that same question, like, what is the story that you're trying to tell? Who needs to hear that story? And how can we, as an agency, help you resonate with your audience? So those are some things that when we look at both public sector versus commercial clients, we're asking similar questions. It may just mean the audience or how we translate that might be a little bit different.
And I'm sure those conclusions are drawn off of years and years of experience, and you're working with so many different clients. Along that journey, what has been the biggest growth moments for Rebirth as you think about just some of the ways in which your company has changed and evolved over the years?
So let's start from the beginning. At first, I really thought we were going to work with small businesses, and I thought that was all we were going to do. We were going to be the bread and butter for small businesses. But we've evolved over time. And over time, what I found was our first thing was our small businesses that we work with, we love working with them. But as we go into growth, we're looking at public sector clients, and we're looking at these opportunities that require so much more. And so over time, it was a lot of just kind of understanding the shifts that we needed to make. I think also when we're thinking about like community had become a big part of the work that we were doing. I think it was can't remember, but right after the pandemic, we worked on a campaign that was specifically for the Switch neighborhood. So that was downtown Birmingham with the 4th Avenue Business District. And what I found was that those campaigns are really, really about diving into the community. And so it really helped me shape the work that we want to do, but then also thinking about it from the meaningful work with our community. So our business just based on the types of clients we were getting and where we were laying our groundwork, it really changed for us based on that work. The community work was probably the biggest pivotal moment for us.
Well, it's got to be so rewarding for you to have started this company after the career that you have had and enjoyed, and then sort of evolved over these several years. I'm sure it was not always easy. They call it work for a reason. What are some of the biggest sort of challenges that you encounter as a small sort of boutique agency, but doing really big, high impact work?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Danny. So
Yeah,
let's start with. I was thinking about that shift, and I know that, we always start with the goals and developing a strategy. So understanding like public sector clients, and you may know this work, sometimes they shift their priorities, which changes for us because we're in the work, and then we have to make adjustments based on the priorities, especially of, public sector clients. So for me, it's very, very important to lay our base where we stood. So our corporate or commercial clients that we continue to work with, that's our base. So even when things change or shift, I think it is very important for us to maintain our ongoing retainer work. And that project work that we do is kind of the additional work that makes up the diversification of how our agency is. And so it is to me, having great colleagues in this industry, helping us navigate spaces when things happen with challenges is very important. But that base of the diversification of how our revenue streams are coming at us, those are things that are challenging, but then also just navigating those with understanding, having a plan A and a plan B.
Yeah, and as you think about those initiatives that kind of move the community forward and sort of are high touch, high impact, what are the criteria or characteristics that you think are essential for initiatives like that to be successful?
Yeah, I think with community work, understanding the mission. And are the goals achievable? Can we get to the end road? We think about things from a roadmap perspective, and you have directions to go somewhere, right? But you also need to know where the end result is. And anytime when you're going on a trip, you put the address where you're trying to get to. So for us, it is very important to understand what the mission is and also the goals. I also think that community work is very, very tricky because the audiences can be so vast, as I mentioned before. So making sure you can connect with the audience and make real connections is very, very important to take any community program forward. The partnerships, so you might have stakeholders, you might have internal, external partners, and making sure you can connect with those partners across the community, across neighborhoods. Who are the leaders in the neighborhoods? Who are the influencers in the neighborhoods? Those things are really, really key to any community work. And I also think, not being afraid to ask the questions, to get feedback. And when you do get feedback, whether it's positive or negative, how do you make the pivot or the shift to ensure that you're still meeting the community where they are?
These projects are so multifaceted. In your view, how are marketing and branding agencies positioned to really meaningfully impact these types of initiatives, recognizing that it takes sort of a village to raise a child in this world? And what are the unique sort of values that Rebirth can bring in that circumstance?
Yeah, it definitely takes a village, and I'm happy that Marketing is a part of our village when it comes down to this. But I think our unique advantage is we are storytellers. We dive into any project looking at how can we shape the narrative? How are we looking at the impact? How are we looking at the community and making those connections? I think if you're good at your work, you have to make sure that the message meets the mark. And that is one of the things that we believe in are the words correct? I probably scrutinize over words more than I can even dream of. If anybody saw the work that we do here, sometimes I'm like, I'll spend a good 20 minutes. Do the words sound right? Are they going to meet people where they are? And I know Jillian is on this call and she can attest to my play on words and how we really pay particular attention and how we tell a client story. But I also think with community, we have an opportunity to be authentic. And if you're in a campaign and you cannot connect with the people on the ground, it's not going to work, because that trust is very important, and showing up consistently with any campaign, it is so key for us to make sure that if we're going to do the work, we know who we're talking to. We are speaking their language when we talk to them. If we're passing graphics or anything else out, we are making sure that they match and everything about the campaign is connecting.
Given all the experience Rebirth has had in Birmingham, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for our city or our region when it comes to workforce development, economic mobility, inclusive growth, and maybe at the same time, what's the biggest barrier for Birmingham?
Well, I think the opportunities are, for me, our agency, we may not be the largest agency. And so making sure we have opportunities to do the work, opportunities at the table, to be included when RFPs come down, or when that there is a campaign when you need boots on the ground. Our agency, we know the work. We relationships with our media so we can tell stories. And I think relationships with our community in terms of influencers, churches, organizations across the board. We're 8 years old, so we may not always have the biggest advertising budgets to, promote our company. But I also think that, people with our network, they're, making sure they're saying our names when we're not at the table and mentioning the work that we do. I think that is very important for inclusivity within our city. I also think that building true partnerships, and I think our partnership with Marketing has been a tremendous opportunity for us, because it gives us a different opportunity to collaborate to work alongside some great talent and to bring our expertise along with your expertise to ensure that campaigns needs to be done, but then also collaborating on that work. How can we work together to ensure that we're reaching the end goal? And I think that's very, very important when we're thinking about opportunities inside of workforce development. From a barrier perspective, I think barriers are not knowing the community and then like access. So I think for what we've seen in Good Jobs in particular, access to information was very, very key. And I think those things can be barriers because sometimes our community, you find that people haven't been exposed to the information or don't want to be involved because not sure what it means for them. And so that takes opportunity for us to dispel some myths and have real conversations and make real connections. And when we have workforce development opportunities, it is so key that we're looking at our community in ways that these are real people and they understand they want a better future for themselves, but sometimes a lot of barriers are in their way, and we have to understand if it's a childcare issue, if it's a transportation issue, and how do we address those issues ongoing so that people can connect the dots to have these opportunities all the time.
Yeah. Speaking of the ways in which we've collaborated, so wanted to talk a little bit about the work that we did together for Good Jobs Birmingham. From your vantage point and your teams, what were some of the most important goals for that initiative when you started working on it?
Well, it was to win, right? To do the job. I think, when we first got into the work, the most important thing was we saw that there was a big goal. And our job, that grant, I think, was 2002 when the grant was awarded, and we came on board in 2022 when it was awarded, and 2024 is when we came on board. And so our main goal was, number one, to connect our underserved community with jobs. Secondly, I think telling the story of Good Jobs, utilizing or leveraging our connections within the media to make sure that we told positive stories, to make sure that we promoted Good Jobs and made sure that the community, whether it was within the Jefferson County or the 7-county region, which that campaign was in, making sure that people knew about it. And then starting with getting people connecting to the opportunity for training was meaningful because that was the first step. They, number one, had to go to the career roadmap. Number two, they had to be selected and go into a training program. And that work was meaningful. It was really meaningful to ensure that we are making real connections, but doing it in a way where you're really boots on the ground every day.
Yeah. As you reflect on that campaign's rollout sort of across the community and Rebirth's role in particular, what were some of the strategic decisions that you and your team made that helped to yield to some of the strong outcomes Good Jobs achieved?
Yeah, so we know the community, and we knew that was probably the first part. The first thing that we started to think about when it came to strategy was like, who were the people that we knew that we can automatically impact? We started from a funnel perspective. And we knew that, number one, we needed to talk with our local politicians, state representatives, so that when they're out speaking with their constituents, that they're able to communicate what Good Jobs was. The second thing was, from a community perspective, making sure that we were in the neighborhoods, the housing authorities, because this was an underserved community campaign. So we wanted to make sure that any of our stakeholders from organizations across these 7-county regions, that we were connecting with them and making sure they knew what Good Jobs was, what was the message, and who was this campaign for. And then I'm going to pivot to Jillian to talk about our work in storytelling when it came down to the social perspective and how we engage on social media from a storytelling perspective.
Yeah. So When we're thinking about social engagement from a strategic point of view, with this campaign, we were wanting to reach people who really had a heart for serving others, had a heart for really, whether that was upskilling their careers or starting something new for the very first time. We wanted to make that attainable to them because the tools are there with the jobs. So we wanted to make sure that we found the right people and got that message out. And so what I've noticed, especially with social engagement, the differentiator from good engagement and great engagement is good shows consistency, great shows consistency with intention. And we didn't just want to create social plans and post across platforms. We wanted to find people that were actively searching for a chance for something new. So that looked like us going into job forums within Facebook and social groups where people were looking for opportunities for hiring. We were looking in those neighborhood groups where people were looking for opportunities that gave support, like Rashida referenced earlier, with the backing of childcare, transportation. So within that strategy, it goes from an organic approach where we're posting on platforms and we might reach a certain amount. But then when we go into those individual groups, that reach quadruples. And we saw that in numbers. And so yeah, definitely wanting to make sure that we stay consistent there because at the end of the day, a good engagement strategy builds awareness, but a great one is solidifying that trust. So using the stories that we saw going through the program. And that's where our partnership with Mark Steen was as I feel like there were moments where that really shined. You know, Mark Steen really supported us in executing some great testimonials from Good Jobs participants that we were able to leverage across platforms. And I can't tell you how many people we met within when we were in those job fairs that said, you know, I found out about this initiative because of Instagram, because of Facebook. So just shows how far the social reach can really get.
Yeah, and it yielded some really incredible results. For example, there were about 1,000 people who earned credentials and about 300 people who were placed in jobs as a result of this broader effort. What are the wins that kind of stand out to you guys personally in all of that work? And what are some of the lessons that you learned that emerged along the way that you'll take with you forward in future similar campaigns?
Yeah. So, Jillian, did you want to answer that? Because I have a few, but you may want to start with your learnings from social. Because I think I want to just add, Danny, in that campaign, we controlled or oversaw most of the messaging. So we oversaw all storytelling aspects, public relations, community engagement. So social media was a big part of our connection and an easier way to tell the story. So Jillian, you want to start with yours?
Yeah. So for us, some of the things that were really apparent from, the beginning were looking at the shift from highlighting just the programs that were offered versus the highlights of the people that were impacted. So making sure that within our social strategy, we were talking and speaking to the training programs that were provided. But what we saw over time is that people were more inclined to visit that career roadmap and get started from training when they heard the stories of the people that were impacted by it and how they were impacted. At that point, we're looking at things that aren't just checking boxes, but we're shifting culture and we're showing an opportunity that maybe wasn't present to them before. And really in the depths of that is really making sure that we're being proactive rather than responsive. And since I've been blessed to be on this team, I've noticed that, especially when we're thinking about civic work, community work, it's not going to be good enough to just respond to the challenges. You really have to get out in front and anticipate what people are going to need, what the constituents are going to need, what the applicants are going to need. And I feel like between Mark Steen and Rebirth, we had a good finger on the pulse of that, just expecting what was going to be needed of us and then making sure we provided those outcomes.
And additionally, I think, we need to pat ourselves on the back because all of us, the number of people that took the career roadmap, I think our job was to get people to take that roadmap. And we were in the community, weekly, making sure that people knew about Good Jobs. So that was community centers, libraries, all of these places. And so what we did was basically take that grassroots approach to ensure that every opportunity or touch point that we were kicking it back to the entry point, which was to take the career roadmap, which I can't even remember what those numbers were, but I know it was a good bit over 2,000 that took the roadmap. That was our job. And our job was to, number one, to connect people with the program and then also build that trust with consistency. And I think over time, what we saw was people were calling us, asking us, I need more information. What more can I get with Good Jobs? Finding out what the credentials. I need to figure out what my next step is. And so it was an amazing opportunity for us to work on this campaign. But what we learned was really build that trust and show up. I think that was the most important part in staying consistent with the community efforts here.
And a lot of the crux of that work was reaching diverse groups of people. How did Rebirth approach issues dealing with equity, access, and targeting historically underrepresented communities in the Good Jobs campaign? What did you guys learn about, or what was reaffirmed by doing this work about engaging those different audiences?
So what was learned was that, number one, people in our community automatically, they have this, I don't think this is for me syndrome. And so dispelling that was probably the first thing, because it doesn't matter how many times we put it on social or how many times they may see it somewhere. Connecting with you eye to eye and talking about the program was probably the most impactful and most important thing that we could have done. Also, this was a 7-county region and not just a Birmingham type of program. And so really touching people, as I mentioned earlier, politicians, making sure that they knew about Good Jobs. And so when they are speaking in their communities and with their constituents, that they're telling them about this program. Also, making sure that all of our partners and stakeholders, housing authorities, we leveraged HABD, we leveraged housing authorities in Bessemer, we leveraged housing authorities across all of our 7-county regions, and making sure wherever people were, we wanted messaging. We put posters in a lot of community centers. We gave out handouts and had street teams to give out handouts at events. And so those things were very critical in how that groundwork, it played a very critical part in our groundwork and everything that we did in this campaign.
Well, the proof was clearly in the pudding, because the Good Jobs Birmingham campaign, there's a real measurable return on investment. So thank you guys for all of the work that you did, because you impacted a lot of people's lives, and that's really what this work is about. Where can folks go to find out more about y'all and the work that Rebirth does?
Jillian, where can people find us?
Well, as Rashida always says, you can visit rebirth.marketing. You can also visit us on Instagram at Rebirth Marketing and Consulting, and slide into our DMs. We would absolutely love to connect.
We definitely have all platforms. So LinkedIn, Facebook, yes, Instagram, but we're just a phone call away. Slide into our DMs. We don't care.
Well, as we wrap up, if you've ever listened to an episode of Talent Wise, we always ask sort of a curveball question at the end. So curveball to you two is, if you had a theme song for your life, what would that be?
Julian, do you want to go first? What's your theme song?
So the overarching theory with myself is I'm always smiling, I'm always laughing. You know, I feel like, especially in today's times, you have to find joy wherever you can take it. And so probably like walking on sunshine, that would probably be mine. I'm trying to spread it everywhere I go. Yeah, I feel like that would be my theme song.
Cool. All right, Rashida.
I wholeheartedly agree that her theme song should be Sunshine. My song would have to be So Ambitious by Jay-Z.
Yes.
And so that song is who I am. It's like when people try to beg you in a corner and tell you you can't do something, watch me do it. That's who I am. So Ambitious is probably the song that I listen to when I need to be reminded of who I am.
Ambitious sunshine. I love it. I love it.
Ambitious sunshine. Exactly.
Rashida, Jillian, thank you so much for joining us today. It is great as always to be with you both. Our partnership with y'all and your team has been amazing, and I'm excited about opportunities for us to continue to collaborate well into the future. Thank you again for joining us this morning. We look forward to having you back.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to your entire team. And we appreciate all the work that we've done and collaborated, and we know the best is yet to come for all of us.
All right. I hope y'all listening at home will join us again next time. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great day.